Marissa, and I'm an educator at the Rosamond Gifford Zoo. However, when I'm not at the zoo, one of my favorite activities to do right in my own backyard is planting trees. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today in this video. I'm going to be giving you some tips and tricks and all different advice on how to plant trees in your yard and where to start. So this time of year, early spring, right when the trees are budding, that's a perfect time to start planting new growth, especially new trees. This tree I have right behind me, it's a sunset maple, and I actually planted it myself about 8 years ago. And as you can see, it's growing nice and strong, and it's actually starting to bud with the warmer weather on its way. So planting trees is a great activity that the whole family can get involved with. I'm going to be taking you through some tips and some advice on how to get your trees, where to get them. So let's get started. Alright, so first I want to talk about just how awesome trees are, because you might not know some of this. Trees create oxygen. So they take in carbon dioxide from the air and actually produce oxygen. So having more trees in your yard is not a bad thing. You'll just have more fresh air and more oxygen. Next, they are very good wind and sound barriers. So as you can see in the background, I live in a pretty open area. I'm surrounded by open fields. So having more trees in my yard actually helps to block the wind from coming in. Also, if you have an area that's really noisy, you live by maybe a highway, having trees in your yard can actually act as a sound barrier as well. They can also provide shade. So if you were in your yard and you had a really nice hangout spot in your yard, but it was always just very sunny, you can plant a tree there to provide some shade for you and add some more comfort in your yard. Reduce water pollution. Trees, especially in storm runoff areas, they can take up excess water and use that. So in areas where you maybe have some runoff, some rainwater in your yard that's always wet, you can try to plant a tree there and it might be able to take up that water and use it for its own resources. Next is creating animal habitats. If you have some trees in your yard and you want to see some more wildlife, planting trees creates more animal habitat in homes. So a lot of birds will use new trees, chipmunks and squirrels. So planting more trees means you'll have more wildlife in your yard to observe. Like I said, there's so many more benefits to trees that I can't even put them all on this paper. Trees are just really great. They're really great for the environment. They're nice shady habitats, and just having some more in your yard will really benefit you and the environment. Alright, we're going to talk about choosing your tree spot. I have diagrammed here some areas that you might want to stay away from when choosing the location to plant your new tree. First, I have a picture of a house. If you're surveying your yard and looking for a spot to plant your new tree, I would stay away from close areas to your house. Even though your new tree and sapling might be pretty small right now, when the tree grows up, it's going to grow taller and wider, and having it too close to your house might actually cause problems for you in the future. Next, I have diagrammed a road. So I would make sure to plant away from a road. When roots sprout and kind of grow out wider and stronger, they can actually uplift the road and cause road damage. So stay away from roads and sidewalks and anything that's pavement, even your driveway too. Roots are very strong and they can uplift pavement. Next, I have diagrammed a fence. I would also stay away from fences because the same thing can happen. The roots can kind of get underneath these fence posts and start lifting them up, causing your fence to become wobbly and unbalanced. Next is a really important one. I have here a property line. That's the line between your house and your neighbor's yard. So if you have a house that butts up against your neighbor's, I would make sure to stay away from that property line, and I wouldn't plant a tree too close to that. Because like I said, when trees grow wider, it might actually start to cross over that property line and maybe cause some issues with your neighbors. So make sure to stay away from these areas. choosing a nice wide open area that gets lots of sunlight is probably best for your tree. Alright, we're going to talk about choosing your tree. I have two categories here that I like to look at before I go and choose a new tree to plant in my yard. One of them is function. So these are some things I listed on the first page that trees are really good at providing for you in your yard. Maybe you need some shade in your yard. You can start researching some trees that are really broad-leafed that will give you the most amount of shade within your yard. Or maybe you would like to put up a visual barrier. You can also get some trees that provide visual barriers. Evergreens are really good for that because they keep their leaves all year round, so you'll have that barrier all year round. But if you have a particular function in mind, that could be a good place to start for your research of what type of tree you would like in your yard. The other category I would say to start with is your yard and soil type. So once you found your location, I would definitely go out into your yard and maybe dig up some of the soil and just take a look at it. You might have some dry soil or sandy, or maybe it's just a really wet area. Knowing that type of characteristic about your yard is going to be really beneficial in getting the correct tree for your yard that's going to prosper and grow. There are some trees, however, that can adapt to many different characteristics within a yard. So just knowing what type of characteristics your yard has is going to provide you with the best tree that will adapt to your yard. Now we are going to talk about buying your tree. So first I would like to mention that you should definitely go out and buy your tree from a store and not get it from the woods. So you might be walking along, maybe in a park or a forest one day, and you might see a sapling. I wouldn't take that sapling just because that seed found that particular spot and it thought it was very suitable for the habitat to start growing. So I would leave that sapling there. I would get it from a store because you will have more options to choose from, especially if you're looking for a specific tree for your yard. The store that will have any of these trees for sale will most likely be any store with a garden section. That's a really good place to start, especially if you're not looking for a very specific tree. And they're definitely out in season right now with the warmer weather on its way. However, if you are looking for more of a specific tree type, maybe going to a landscaping place or a nursery would be a better place for you because they will definitely have more options, and you could talk to maybe some tree experts there that can further help you along on choosing what type of tree for your yard. Whatever place you choose, you will most likely be buying a tree that's called a container grown tree. That just means it's going to be grown in a plastic container, and it's going to be about 1 to 3 feet tall, which is the perfect height to be transported from that container that it's grown in into the yard where you dig it up. All right, now we're going to talk about the exciting part, which is planting time. First step is going to be digging the hole for your tree. I've diagrammed here your tree that's in the container that it comes in. I'm going to talk about the width of the hole that you should be digging and the depth of the hole that you should be digging. The width of the hole is going to be 3 to 4 times wider than the container that it comes in. So you can go ahead and get a measuring tape if you want and measure out the width of your container, and then go 3 to 4 times wider than that and dig in kind of like a swoop motion, so the soil is kind of still loose and the tree roots will be able to take into that very well. Next is going to be the depth. So the depth of your hole is going to be as deep as your container. So you can go ahead and take that measuring tape again and measure as deep as your container and dig that deep, making sure you maintain this kind of swoop to your hole. After you've dug your hole, next you're going to water the hole. That's just going to give it a little bit more of a mixture, so before you put the tree in, it has some water to take up within its roots. Now we're going to talk about placing the tree within the hole. I have diagrammed a series of steps here that you can follow once you have your tree in the container from the store. You're going to want to get that tree out of the container without breaking any of the roots and without breaking that stem. An easy way to do this is kind of placing your hands around that container and going back and forth like this to break up the soil that's holding in the roots and the tree. Then you're going to gently rock the tree back and forth just slightly and pulling straight up like this. You don't want to pull it to the side because you might actually break the stem of the tree since it will be very tiny right now. Once you have the tree free from the container, you're going to want to break the roots up a little bit just so they are a little more free falling. When they're in the container, they tend to grow kind of in a spiral since they are just contained within that container. But since we want them to grow outwards and kind of establish more of a base, we're going to want to break that up a little bit. And you might lose some soil along the way, but you can do it right over the hole so the soil fills in. Once you have the root actually kind of broken up a little bit, you can place it into the hole. You're going to want to make sure that this part of the tree, which is called the trunk flare, that's where the trunk kind of gets bigger and the roots are attached to that trunk piece right there. You're going to want that level with the rest of the ground that you did not dig up. That's going to ensure that there's no pooling of water when it rains or when you water it. So making sure that's nice and level. If you accidentally dug your hole too deep, you can fill that in with a little bit of soil first and then place your tree right on top. After that, you can backfill your hole with the soil that you dug out from that hole. So fill that in, pack it nice and tight and snug so the tree isn't tipping over or falling. And you can go ahead and give it some water as well. So if that tree doesn't want to stand up on its own and it's kind of falling to one side or the other, you can actually go ahead and stake the tree if necessary. So you can put 2 stakes on either side of the tree, and these pictured here are flexible ties. A lot of people just use rope. You're going to want to make sure one's going either way, just so the tree, if it falls which way or the other, it has some support on both sides. However, when you plant your tree at first and it isn't falling to either side and it doesn't look like it needs staking, you can go ahead and leave it alone because the not having stakes with it will actually make your trunk a little bit stronger. But if it does need some staking, you can go ahead and put some stakes and support there for it. After you've planted your tree, you're going to want to monitor it for a while because it is in a very vulnerable state once you've transported it from the container into the ground. If a couple of days have gone by and you didn't stake your tree at first, but it looks like it's starting to lean, you can go ahead and start staking that tree. Once it looks like it has established a nice base and isn't leaning anymore, you can go ahead and take those stakes away so it can start to grow on its own. You might want to water it about once per week. However, there are particular trees that have more specifications. Those usually come with a plant identification card and how to water it and take care of it. So definitely refer to that plant identification card if it comes with one. You can take this opportunity to learn from your tree as well. Things like photosynthesis, how the trees make their own food. You can learn about the different seasons. Why do trees lose their leaves in the winter? Why do they grow buds in the summertime? And wildlife encounters. So like I said, once your tree has established into your yard, some animals might take note of that and start to make their own habitat out of it as well, which could be some really cool observations. Lastly, just make sure to provide plenty of love for your tree. So keeping an eye on it, making sure it's growing and has everything it needs to take hold and establish in your yard. I want to thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you learned a little bit more about trees, and I hope you go out there and start planting some trees of your own. I want to wish you a happy Earth Day, and thanks for watching this video.